What is up, everybody? Welcome to another World Cup recap here on Touchline Talk. Before I jump in, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the other videos I'll put out throughout the tournament. And you can scan that QR code right next to me to go find my written work on Substack. So be sure to check that out too. Before I actually jump in to the games today, I want to make one point right off the top. There is nothing surprising about what Japan did and about what Canada did in these games. What Saudi Arabia did against Argentina, that was shocking. What Japan, who by the way almost made the quarterfinals of the last Men's World Cup, and Canada, who won CONCACAF qualifying, did, are not surprising. Anyone surprised by the performances those two teams put in is simply not paying attention. I'm getting real frustrated. I'm seeing so much of this framed as the Japan one in particular, we're going to talk about in a minute, as these stunning upsets and more chaos in the World Cup, and that's just simply not the case. So let's jump into that game first. It was the most notable result of the day. Japan 2, Germany 1. I did have Germany coming out of this group. I picked them to finish ahead of Japan. I also said in my preview, if somebody in this group doesn't do their job, Spain or Germany, Japan is going to take their spot. And that is exactly what happened in this game. Germany, very good in the first half, able to play through the middle of the field despite Japan sort of making everything congested. Jamal Musiala was the reason why. He's what makes this Germany team different than previous iterations where they've struggled at major tournaments. Now, obviously, they lost this game too. But I tweeted this, every time I watch him, I become more convinced he's the best young player in the world. But they only get the one goal out of it from the penalty spot, Okay Gundogan. And then Japan, knowing they need that goal, reorganize things heading into the second half, make some substitutions, and really go for it. And Germany just lose control of the game. Japan had some chances they created before they even got the goal. They get the equalizer, then some really, really poor individual moments from German players for the second one. And then they hold on for the win. The one thing I really want to highlight here, because I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this Japan team in terms of the fact they beat Germany, because that's not surprising. What needs to be celebrated about this Japan team, though, is their tactical versatility and their flexibility is absolutely incredible. They came in the first half and sat back, absorbed pressure from Germany without letting the game get out of control. Now, it could have, but Germany didn't take advantage of all their opportunities. They only got the one goal. Because Japan can't play aggressively against Germany for 90 minutes. They can't try and be on the front foot for 90 minutes. It's not going to work. They also can't sit there for 90 minutes absorbing pressure because A, there's no guarantee you're going to create anything on the counter, and B, Germany is going to score at least one, if not multiple goals on you. It's not like Germany were horrible in this game. Especially in the first half when they had the ball all the time, they created plenty of chances. So what Japan did is they found the perfect balance between the two that is almost impossible to achieve on the international level because of the limited time you have for preparation and tactics and all of those kind of things. You don't get to work with these players every day. They executed the sort of sitting in, low block, absorbing pressure for a half, and then they executed the hitting you on the counter, being much more aggressive, being on the front foot when you can for a half. And by the way, Japan's attacking players are quite good. So they didn't need one, they created more than one chance and they didn't need 400 chances to take advantage. You're not just sort of throwing it up there hoping somebody creates something. These are a bunch of guys playing in the Bundesliga, playing in La Liga, playing in the Premier League in a couple cases. Guys with Premier League experience, Takumi Minamino. It's an awfully good team. I'm not sure there's another team in the world that could have put together two halves like that. That Ali Wagner kept saying this, and I wholeheartedly agree. I think that was the plan all along. It certainly looked intentional. It is so difficult to find that combination of players and to be able to function as a unit that cohesively and just completely change your approach from one half to the other and make both of them work the way you need to win a game like this. So mad props to Japan. I'm not surprised, but it's just another example of how good this team is. The other thing I want to mention from this game, more before the game, Germany, if you haven't seen this, made their own form of protest for FIFA not allowing captains to wear these One Love armbands. And again, sort of another example of an attempt to silence players, silence the criticism, the social awareness heading into this World Cup. It's an inevitable story. Kudos to Germany for highlighting it and making their opinions clear and finding a way to use their voice, even when FIFA was trying to stop players from using that voice through at least threatening, if not promising to follow through on. I don't exactly know how that all played out, but players were not wearing these One Love armbands as captains because they were worried they were going to get yellow cards, and you can't afford to pick up yellow cards, especially unnecessary ones, in this tournament when two of them get you suspended. It's another commentary on FIFA and Qatar just not taking responsibility for deciding to put the tournament here. This is part of it. You made this choice. You got to answer for it. You got to accept the criticism that comes with it. And also, whether you agree with German players doing this or not, I will never be here for silencing voices and silencing criticism. Unless there's a very specific set of circumstances, and this is not that. Players should be allowed to express however they feel about the fact that they are playing. They can't control where this tournament is played. They should be able to voice their thoughts on it, and Germany found a way to do that. So if you haven't seen what their photo from pregame as kind of the starting lineup picture looked like, go ahead and check that out. Second game to talk about, Belgium, Canada. I was really looking forward to this one. It delivered, as I mentioned before. Canada maybe a little bit better than I thought they would be, but not surprised. This is ultimately how this game looked, and that they were this impressive. Anybody surprised hasn't been paying attention to this team. And it was just one of those days where everything that can go against you kind of did for Canada. Incredibly unlucky to not get anything out of this game. They come flying out of the gates. They get the early penalty. That was absolutely a penalty. I do feel like refereeing-wise, all of the major calls were correct. This was the one that was a penalty, and it was awarded. Alphonso Davies takes the penalty. You can question whether it should have been somebody else. Generally speaking, I will never have an issue with the best player on your team and the face of your country taking that penalty, even though he's not a typical penalty taker. It's not like he's a center back. I trust Alphonso Davies. Courtois comes up big to keep Belgium in the game. Michy Batshuayi gets a goal kind of out of nothing on the counter against the run of play. And that was that. Canada came and got some opportunities early in the second half, got a couple at the very end of the game. But generally, I want to give Belgium credit for the way that they killed this game off once they got that goal, because they were not good for most of that first half until the goal went in. And it's not like they were great after, but they did seem to have at least kind of a sense of calm and a sense of control as Canada were chasing this game. Canada's most dynamic moments came in the first half, not the second half. And that's got to mean something for Belgium moving forward. Now, they also need to be better defensively and not give opponents this many opportunities. And, the stats are so lopsided in favor of Canada in just about every aspect. They did find a way to win, though, and they found a way to win a game in which Romelu Lukaku did not play, and Kevin De Bruyne did not play well at all, up to his, comparing him to his lofty standards. It can't get that much worse, and it can get an awful lot better for Belgium. So the fact that you did have a defensive foundation when you needed it, even if you didn't have it for 90 minutes, is something to build on. Kevin De Bruyne is going to be much better next time out. Eventually, the plan is to get Lukaku back. So this is a really good 3 points for Belgium they didn't deserve. And from the Canada side, this was a huge opportunity to put yourself in the driver's seat for one of these two spots. They couldn't capitalize on it. But this is also the game that you were expecting to lose. It is not the end of the world, and you kept it within one goal. If Belgium plays really well against Croatia, then you might be going through on goal difference. The Croatia game was always going to be the decisive one for me, and that hasn't changed. If anything, Canada came away a little bit better because, as we'll discuss in a little bit here, Croatia didn't come away with 3 points against the fourth team in this group. So, not worried about Canada. That was a major positive. It's just the reality of these World Cups in the 3-game group stage that, as much as I want to sit here talking about process, you just don't have time to be confident the results are going to even out. Maybe they do in the next 2 games and Canada takes care of business and they're fine. You also might be looking back on this game as the reason Canada didn't go through to the knockout stage. The team that had no trouble scoring goals was Spain. The 7-0 scoreline pretty much tells the story, so I don't have too much to add here other than they were outstanding. But the one thing within that, and this was my big question heading into the tournament with Spain, what you saw at Euro 2020 was a team that actually found a way to use the ball to create chances and ultimately score goals, at least some of the time. Now, they are not the world's best team at finishing. The striker position is still a question mark for me. It's going to excuse me. It's going to be a question mark throughout this tournament because Alvaro Morata, you know who he is, and I have my concerns. But they were getting goals from all over the place. And eventually, Morata found a way to make an impact in the game, too. 2018, it was a bunch of possession with no bite to it. And so I wanted to see which of one of those is the real Spain that we're talking about now in 2022. Because part of this is the Euro 2020 squad looked way closer to this one because, it hasn't been so long since that tournament, and the Pedris of the world and all of these younger players started to kind of come into the fold in that tournament and during qualifying for the World Cup. So this squad is much more similar to the one that looked so good at Euro 2020. And what we saw in this game is, again, it's a Costa Rica team that does not have much going forward. Their hope was Keylor Navas being spectacular and keeping them in games. This is not the Costa Rica team that made the run. I mean, they are just a much, much less dangerous version. But to put 7 goals past anybody at the World Cup is a really good sign. And you've seen outbursts like this from Spain before at Euro 2020. Not only did they dominate the ball the way you expect them to, but they were scoring goals left and right. And so that is a really promising sign. They look the part of a true contender. Again, it's only one game. It's against the worst team in the group. But there are plenty of other teams who have struggled against teams that they should be beating. Spain, no struggles whatsoever. And then finally, I mentioned this a little bit, Croatia draw with Morocco. This is another one of those games kind of similar to what you saw with Denmark. I was trying to remember who the team was, where the favored European nation just didn't really get anything going. And Morocco were able to be very comfortable for most of the game, create some chances, but really the biggest thing Morocco did was kept that Croatian midfield in check. Modric, Kovacic, you can go down the list. None of those key players for Croatia had a massive, massive impact on this game. And so you pair that with the questions at striker for Croatia, and you get this kind of result. And this is, again, a good Morocco team that just brought back two very good players into the fold. I expected a lot from them last time around, and they didn't deliver. This was more what I expected to see 4 years ago. Can they keep it up? Who knows? But, again, from this group standpoint, if you're Canada, you will take this every single day. You'll like your chances against these two teams better than against Belgium. And so, knowing that neither of them have 3 points on the board is a real positive, I would argue, for Canada. And the other part of this for Croatia, I kind of mentioned the number 9. You got to find a goal scorer. Luka Modric is more of a secondary goal scorer, right? He's a guy who runs the game, who unlocks defenses. He's a terrific passer. He can absolutely score you goals. But he's not carrying a team with his goal scoring. You need to find somebody to put the ball in the net. And that was a glaring issue in this game. They didn't play well, and they didn't take the chances they did create. Ultimately, where I come down on this group is basically none of this was disastrous for anyone. It's going to come down to what happens when Croatia, Morocco, and Canada play each other and whether somebody can take points off Belgium. Which is what I thought at the beginning. None of these games changed my opinion on that. There was nothing. Canada would have been one of the biggest winners of this entire tournament so far had they been able to get 3 points from that game. But they didn't. And so everybody's just kind of basically still at square one from my perspective. Whoever wins these head-to-head games is going to be the team, or avoids losing them. Can you get 4 to 6 points out of these last 2 games? That's the team that's going to go through, because I expect Belgium to go through. And the team that I had the fewest questions marks about, despite the fact they lost, is Canada. I was tempted to pick Canada to go through before. I didn't have the courage to do it. Maybe it comes back to haunt me. Maybe that's the best performance we're going to see from Canada, even though they didn't score. But Croatia has some work to do. I think Morocco is just the 4th best team in this group. But everybody is still right there because of the way this all played out. That is all for today's recap. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. I'll see you next time.